October 19, 2015, marked a pivotal moment in Canada's political and social history. Disillusioned by the country's trajectory, a record number of Canadians headed to the polls, driven by a collective yearning for change. The outcome was a landslide victory for Justin Trudeau, whose ascent to the role of Prime Minister was greeted with thunderous applause and hope-filled chants. Trudeau's campaign mantra was clear and resonant: "It's time for a real change, my friends." Canadians were captivated by his promises to address escalating housing costs, alleviate the rising cost of living, and usher the nation into an era of equity, opportunity, and prosperity. In those heady days, the Canadian dream felt within reach. Trudeau's government vowed to transform the socio-economic landscape, building an inclusive society that ensured affordable housing, equitable economic opportunities, and sustainable growth. Yet, nearly a decade later, this dream has soured. Skyrocketing housing prices, food insecurity, and dwindling opportunities have plunged the nation into a crisis of confidence. Immigrants, once hailed as vital contributors to Canada's future, are now leaving in record numbers, disillusioned by broken promises. For countless citizens, the Canadian dream has metamorphosed into a dystopian nightmare. Chapter 1. The Housing and Rental Crisis, a Nation in Distress. Homeownership, from a rite of passage to an unattainable ideal. To grasp the depth of the housing crisis, one need only listen to ordinary Canadians. They recall a time when homeownership symbolized stability, success, and the fulfillment of the Canadian dream. Owning a home was a universal aspiration, one deeply ingrained in the national ethos. Today, that aspiration has been shattered. Consider this. To afford an average home in Canada, a household must earn an astonishing $170,000 annually. In Vancouver, one of the country's most expensive cities, this requirement escalates to an eye-watering $360,000 annually. Contrast this with the median family income of $70,000, and the grim reality becomes evident: homeownership has become a fantasy for the majority. This wasn't always the case. Just a few decades ago, Canadian homes were accessible to a wide swath of the population. In the early 1980s, the average home price was just 3 times the median family income. Fast forward to today, and the gap has ballooned, with home prices increasing by over 900%, far outpacing wage growth. Even for those fortunate enough to afford a home, the value proposition is disheartening. A $2 million property in Vancouver often amounts to little more than a modest bungalow. Meanwhile, in U.S. cities like Austin, Texas, the same budget secures sprawling mansions complete with luxurious amenities. The rental market. A crisis of availability and affordability. For Canadians who have resigned themselves to renting, the landscape is equally bleak. Years of underbuilding, restrictive zoning laws, and "not in my backyard" NIMBY opposition have created a severe imbalance between supply and demand. Rental vacancy rates across Canada sit at an unprecedented 1.5%, leaving prospective tenants locked in a fierce and often dehumanizing battle for housing. It's not uncommon for a single rental listing to attract hundreds of applicants, forcing many to offer higher than asking rents or months of prepaid deposits just to secure a lease. In major urban centers like Toronto and Vancouver, the average cost of a one-bedroom apartment has climbed to nearly $3,000 per month. For context, this is equivalent to spending over 50% of the median household income on rent alone, well above the widely accepted affordability threshold of 30%. Root causes. A multifaceted crisis. The housing crisis is not merely a byproduct of economic forces. It is also the result of systemic failures at multiple levels of government. Population growth without planning. Since 2016, Canada has welcomed nearly 3 million immigrants and over 1 million international students, an unprecedented influx that has strained an already underbuilt housing market. While immigration fuels economic and cultural vibrancy, it has also intensified competition for scarce entry-level homes and rental units. Regulatory hurdles. Developers face lengthy approval processes, restrictive zoning laws, and prohibitive municipal fees, all of which add substantial costs and delays to housing projects. In some provinces, these barriers increase home prices by over 20%, costs that are inevitably passed on to consumers. Foreign investment and money laundering. Canada's real estate market has become a haven for wealthy foreign investors and illicit funds. Billions of dollars in laundered money have been funneled into Canadian properties, particularly in Vancouver, driving up prices and pricing out local buyers. Despite numerous investigations, government action has been minimal, allowing the problem to persist unabated. The role of NIMBYISM. Resistance from existing homeowners to new developments, often justified as preserving neighborhood character, has stymied efforts to expand housing supply. This cultural resistance, combined with political inertia, has left cities ill-equipped to meet growing demand. Are you enjoying this journey so far? If you're finding this content insightful, why not show your support by giving us a thumbs up? And remember, subscribing means you'll always be the first to know when we drop our next video. Chapter 2. The Cost of Living Crisis, Survival over Stability. Food insecurity. The struggles of everyday Canadians. The skyrocketing cost of housing is compounded by equally alarming increases in the price of basic necessities. Since 2022, food prices have risen by over 10%, forcing nearly 2 million Canadians to rely on food banks, a record high and double the number recorded in 2019. Energy costs and the carbon tax debate. Energy costs, particularly for heating and transportation, have reached unsustainable levels. The federal carbon tax, while aimed at reducing emissions, has disproportionately impacted low-income households, particularly in regions reliant on oil heating. Many Canadians now face the unenviable choice between heating their homes and meeting other essential expenses. Chapter 3. Declining economic productivity, a nation losing its edge. The productivity slump. Canada's economic productivity has declined by 3% since 2019, a stark contrast to the 6% growth observed in the United States. This stagnation has led to flat wages and diminished economic opportunities, prompting a brain drain as skilled workers seek better prospects abroad. Barriers to innovation. The lack of competition in key industries, ranging from telecommunications to banking, has stifled innovation. High regulatory barriers protect entrenched players, discouraging new entrants and perpetuating inefficiencies. Conclusion. A nation at a crossroads. Canada stands at a critical juncture. The challenges of housing affordability, cost of living, and economic stagnation require bold, systemic reforms. Without decisive action, the Canadian dream may remain out of reach for future generations. Let's strive to reclaim that dream, ensuring that Canada fulfills its promise as a land of opportunity for all. Thanks for watching, explorers. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like and share it with others who love uncovering the untold stories of the world. And if you haven't yet, what are you waiting for? Subscribe now and join our growing community of curious minds.